Commissioner Erickson, what are the plans for a county-wide shellfish protection district?
We've talked about this for several years now. For those of you who have worked in the shellfish industry or are landowners around some of the more threatened areas, we've had a number of what we call shellfish protection areas. And those have been areas where there has been a downgrade in the shellfish harvest because of some toxins, and it might be something rolling off the state highway, or it might be goose and animal activities that are unseemly in our waters. It might be a septic system that isn't working quite right. I'm trying to be delicate about this. We've all just finished dinner after all. No. But we have a number of them. We've had one in Annis Bay. We have had, I think, a more noteworthy one in the Oakland Bay area. And one of the issues that we had talked about as a county was, rather than having those small pockets of activity throughout the county, to look at a larger, more strategic way of identifying what we need to be doing around the shorelines. We have targeted this year, actually, to take action towards a countywide shellfish protection, or clean water district, as we're calling it. We're looking for some federal and state money. At this point, there isn't a lot of that around. But we're also starting some conversations, both with the Hood Canal Coordinating Council and its new little partner organization, the Alliance for South Puget Sound, to look at how we can work with our adjoining communities and develop a set of standards for living near and playing and working around the waterfront areas that will help ensure the best protection of our fragile waterfronts, at the same time not meaning that we have to go in and retrofit and redo things, but in fact prevent them damage as much as possible to begin with. We've had some good conversations. We had just a very good conversation on Wednesday of this week at the Hood Canal Coordinating Council about looking at how Kitsap and Jefferson and Mason County and two tribes working together could come up with a set of common standards for future use of the waterfront areas and how we're going to keep those clean. We're also beginning those conversations with Pierce, Kitsap, and Thurston County for the South Puget Sound. How that's going to play out in terms of what funding is available from the Puget Sound Partnership, or what we might ask the community to contribute, I don't know at this point. And remember, I'm one part of a three-headed monster. I'm one of three commissioners. But I think we're all acutely aware of the concerns about waterfront. And, you know, you can have a beautiful home, but it's not worth very much if it's on a piece of water that isn't well protected and clean. So I think we all have an investment in that one.
Okay, Port Commissioner Hub. Let's talk about international trade a little bit. What is your commercial development plan, or the port's commercial development plan, for the industrial area located in the international trade zone near Sanderson Field?
I think that's a bit of a misnomer. I think really what you mean to refer to is the foreign trade zone. The foreign trade zone is a tool. It's a tool for manufacturing businesses to take advantage of that goes back to the 1930s, where in order to relieve manufacturers from the immediate obligation to pay import duty on partially finished goods and raw materials until those goods have been turned into a finished product and actually entered the stream of commerce, they didn't have to pay the duty. That's what a foreign trade zone is all about. The largest foreign trade zone in the United States is sponsored by the Port of Olympia, Foreign Trade Zone 216. We have two pieces of a 13-piece foreign trade zone in the four-county area of Kitsap, Mason, Thurston, and Lewis County. The two pieces that we have are 200 acres at Sanderson Field and 200 acres at Johns Prairie. Now, all that means is that if a manufacturer wants to move into one of those foreign trade zones and take advantage of the regulations that are in a stack of papers about that deep, they can take advantage of it there. It's not the kind of thing that causes a company to say, "Wow, we're going to move into the Port of Shelton because they've got a foreign trade zone," any more than a company would say, "Wow, we're going to move into the Port of Shelton or even into Mason County because they've got a terrific broadband communications capability there." It's a tool that if you have it, it's useful. If you don't have it, they go someplace else. So it's not the kind of thing that you sit back and plan to fill into. It's just something that can be used as there. So if that answers the question.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor, since many programs like law enforcement are funded by grants, can you give us an idea on what the city's thinking is or plan to sustain those programs when those grants expire?
Well, first of all, just give you a little background on this year's budget. For those of you who participated in our budget process this year, you know that a lot of concern our folks had were really a couple: law enforcement, law enforcement, law enforcement. That said, we went in one of our tenets to go back to our employees, and through those programs I mentioned earlier, we asked for participation to help us solve our budget issues this year from our employees. They did that. That's one place that's helped us a little bit this year, and they've stepped up their plate and volunteered to pick up more of their costs on medical. That's only part of it. I think, again, I go back to my basic answer. First of all, we have to be pro-Shelton, pro-Mason County, shop here. That keeps the pilot light lit. I think also, in addition to getting the Wallace-Nealon development done, we need to do that. We need to have more commercial development. I think another thing that we need to do is look at expanding our commercial and industrial areas where possible. We have the infrastructure going in. The city, I think a really important thing, we should have had balloons flying in the air as we lifted a development moratorium because we were able to get our sewer plant to the point where we could feel safe about not violating capacity. I think that's a critical thing. I think there are some other things that we have to look at. Nobody wants new taxes. I think what most of you want, what I want, is if there's something that's going to cost us money, we all share in it, but we get value out of it. The state is looking at giving us some other tools. Some of those are taxing tools. Well, first and foremost, we have to be able to have jobs here for people to work so they can earn money that they can spend locally and stay locally. That said, we do have, and I can't speak for the county, but I can speak for our commission, we do have a budget that is roughly 65 or 70% public safety and current expense. That's a big piece. So how do we get there? Well, I have a thought. One of those is to use some of those other taxing options. Let people vote on them, not city-driven. I won't go into any great detail tonight, but I think there are some that we would, people who come to Mason County, shop here, play here, vacation here, they can help us pay for some of those sustained needs that we have, like, for example, supporting law enforcement and even our streets. So it may be a nebulous answer, but I think the bottom line is the grants, many of them are going to go away, and we're going to have to look for other resources. We are at a point where, I can only say this personally, and I know Don and Mike are there with me also, is we have reached a point where we're really struggling, but we're working hard to maintain quality core services. And there's not a lot of fluff left. So we're going to have to look at some other options, but the biggest single thing I think is to re-energize this economy that we have by being more supportive of industrial and commercial growth and fill those spots in stores like bringing Goodwill Industries to Mason County and Shelton.